Hi. Last episode I decided I was going to be a photographer. Eek. Now what? That was my thought. I was overwhelmed with how do I do that? Where do I start? What do I do? And if you remember, I had started out with videography at the church. We had learned to do videos, and I had to learn. I bought a camera for that, and I had to learn the photo basics for that. And I did tons of research, and I made little cheat sheets and all kinds of things for what to do for photography. And the first thing you learn for photography is the exposure triangle, the ISO, the shutter speed, and the aperture, and how each one of them interacts with each other. And once you learn it, you understand it. But when you're trying to learn it, it's just like, give me a really solid answer, and there is no solid answer. I compare it to learning to drive stick shift. you once you know it, but it's learning that. It's a feel for it. It's you get into it and you learn it, but it's trial and error before you learn it. And so light affects everything in photography, and it's learning to control that light and how much light to let in and how much light to not let in if it's extremely bright and sunny day and things like that. So I learned those basic things, the laws of light, the laws of inverse square law, how the light's here and how far it is before it falls off, and the placement of it and how important soft lighting is. So I learned that, and that still would apply to photography. But do you use the same lights, and where do you start? So the first thing I would say I had to determine the type or the genre of photography, and there are many types of photography, more than you would think. You think, oh, you're a photographer. Well, when you say that, many things, and I'm finding that out when I talk to people. They're like, oh, could you do this picture? And it's like, I've never done anything like that in my life. But in their mind, that's the type of photography they see. Maybe it's pet photography, it's aerial photography, product photography. There's just so many different things you can do, but I knew without any doubt that I wanted to do portrait photography, and I wanted it in a studio. That is what I spent my time learning with videos, and so I knew that's what I wanted to do. With videos, it's very different. So we're talking about a transition out of video and into photography. I had learned all of the Final Cut Pro and making movies and doing intros and titles and things like that with the Final Cut Pro, and we've done interviews, and you do use some of the same very basics. You use the aperture setting to maybe do an interview, like I did an interview with my husband, and he's nice and clear and the background is blurry, and that's what they call bokeh, and most people know that. But I really had to study that, and it applies. But when you're getting into photography, it is completely different, because you are talking about shutter speed and how fast it should be, and the ISO. And secret, I don't even know what ISO stands for. I do know what it means and how you use it, and I do use it. So first thing was deciding that I wanted what I wanted to do. So the portrait, but the part that sort of played into that was two things really. The first thing was, I knew I was drawn to the newborn. When you're looking at photography pictures, or just photography in general, you're doing searches, the newborns was exactly what I was drawn to. I love my favorite pose, probably even will always be, is the head on chins pose. It's really my favorite. And so I knew that, but also the second thing is location. Where are you going to set up at? If I knew I wanted to do studio portraiture, where was I going to start for that? And I thought, well, maybe I could rent a space, and I'm trying to calculate in my mind how long it would take for me to begin an income, and how long it would take for me to bring money in, and how much I'd have to bring into, you'd have to pay for the studio and then be able to pay yourself. So I actually got in my car, and I'm driving all over Wichita. I'm doing Google searches, Facebook searches for property that's available that's not a whole lot of money. I found a place on Douglas that I loved and thought that would be perfect. It was this beautiful storefront. Of course, it was not in my budget. And I kind of realized I was getting ahead of myself, because I really needed to build something up before I did that. And so I talked it over with my husband, and we're talking about what could we do. And I tried the garage, and that really didn't work. Very quickly I knew that didn't work. We set up in there, and I did do some pictures with my grandson and some friends, and we had it in there for maybe a month. They were cute Christmas pictures, but my husband needed that garage, and it wasn't sealed and things like that, so I knew that wouldn't work. And we ended up moving the studio, or creating a studio in their extra bedroom, and it was small, so I knew that I had a choice of doing newborns and maybe some sitter sessions and some cake smashes and headshots. That's what I had space for. So that's where that kind of made the decision between my love for newborns and portraits and my space that I had. So the next thing what I would say is, what do I need to get started? And that was overwhelming inside of itself. What do you do? Of course, everybody goes to YouTube, and I went to YouTube. If I had $1 for every time I was on YouTube looking and listening and trying to find the good education, I would be a rich woman. And everybody wants to be on YouTube, so you have to weed out the mom with the camera that just took one picture of her child, and then you find people like Kelly Brown and Anna Brandt that are professionals, or well-known Russ Jackson, that have created some phenomenal business, and now they're into training. And so I would learn that training, and then I was very fortunate to find a Facebook group with a woman that is a trainer and kind-hearted, inspired by Newborn, if you want to look it up. She is a professional, and she's actually transitioned out of doing the photography to being a trainer. So that's how fortunate I was that I stumbled upon that. And in that group, there were so many people that were seasoned and so many people that were beginners. People would say, this is what I took, what did I do wrong? And everybody would join in and say, well, you need to do this, and you need to do this, and how about this? I could post a picture of me practicing, and they're like, well, you need to move your light here. And so it was just so educational, informative. I found about 4 other groups, but that has always been my favorite group, and I'm still in it now. Now I try to chime in and help other people now that I've learned what I'm doing. But the first thing I would say for Newborn, when you're watching videos, when you're in that group, anything you're going to hear over and over and over is safety. And that's rightfully so, because if you're going to work with newborns, they're fragile and tiny human beings that don't have good circulation yet, and they're just so fragile. So the safety is the first thing. And one of the first courses I took was a newborn safety course from Kelly Brown. And then the next thing is the lighting placement of when you're taking pictures of newborn. Don't shoot up the nose. And that sounds funny to me even to this day, but that is the biggest thing. Like if I'm telling a mom, you're going to take pictures at home, don't shoot up the nose, and that just means the angle. You don't want to be, if you see the nostrils, you missed the mark on taking the pictures. You want to shoot down. And then probably the next thing that I learned was about lighting. Like I said, did video lighting, and so that was constant lighting, and I had to learn that constant lighting is not strong enough, it's not bright enough. You have to have something more powerful. And then you go from how much money do you have and what equipment, and I ended up going with a Godox. It's a cheaper brand, but it's worked out phenomenally for me, and I found out that a lot of people are using it. So my first one is a bulky SK400II, but I still have it, and actually this is what's lighting, the model lights is what's lighting me up now. And so that I had to learn the equipment, the lighting, and what kind of modifier do you use. That's the other thing. You can have a nice light, but what kind of modifier? And so, which is absolutely crazy that you're doing pictures of a newborn and you buy an 84-inch PLM umbrella. And I don't know if you could pan the camera to see it, but it's a huge umbrella, because when you're taking pictures of a newborn, you want soft, even lighting. You want it to be not harsh. You want it to be soft, and so you get a big light modifier. We did paint our little studio room all white, so that in that small space that it provided a bounce for the lighting. And then I had to learn posing and how to be safe with the baby, but how do you do these poses? And I remember watching Finna photographer. She's on YouTube, very famous. And I remember she had a video on what do you need top 10 things you need to be a newborn photographer. I'm writing them down, you know. And of course the camera's it, and then the light, but then there's so many other things. And that's just why I recorded this video in front of this, because this is what I began buying, was the things that I knew I needed. The light, of course, and a backdrop. And do you build one? Do you have a cloth one? You have to have a posing table. But the biggest thing is probably the wraps, because you're always wrapping them up in something beautiful. Or maybe tons of headbands and things like this that you have. And then you have props. You put them in a bed, or you put them in a bucket or a bowl, and things like that. So that's the top things that I would learn. And from the people in the group, you would learn that over and over, people were asking the same question as they started. What's the number one prop? And, you know, you have to have something to pose them on, a posing table. Some people use a beanbag, and then a bowl. And a bowl is very simple. You're putting them in a little bowl, and you're just wrapping them up and standing over top and taking the picture. So that's probably the easiest one. Bucket poses, things like that. But the hardest thing you learn is light, where you're placing your light. That essentially, as long as you're keeping the baby safe and you have the baby posed, you have to make sure the light is good. So I learned as much as I could, bought what I could afford, learned to make what I could make, and got started. I practiced on a family member first, and mommy was very nervous, and the baby, I was nervous as well. And I had everything set up and was ready to go, I thought, and I got the baby on the beanbag and got the light placed just right, and everything was good. And then I realized, where am I going to stand to take her picture? And I'm trying to squeeze between the light and the posing table, and only got a few good shots of her. So that was lessons learned. So then I knew that I had to work on where I'm placing myself and where I'm placing the baby when I'm posing the baby. So I got brave, and I decided to do a model call, and here we go. So I put an ad out on Facebook, and I had way more people offer than I ever thought. I must have had 25 people offer to come and do it, and I was amazed. And I picked 6 people, and I did 6 model calls, and probably about half of them were actually newborns, because half of them were people that missed getting newborn shots, probably because of money or something, and they just wanted newborn pictures. One baby was almost 3 months old, and she was bigger than all my props, and she was the most sweetest, beautifulest baby you could ever meet. But she hadn't had newborns because she'd had colic, and she just wasn't able to be still long enough to get a good picture. So that one was almost like dear to my heart, that I was able to do that one for that mom, and they turned out beautiful. There were things I learned very quickly of what I was doing wrong, what I needed to improve on. I was nervous, but I'll tell you what, the very first model call I had, God blessed me with this woman, Katie. She was just the most calm mother, and this was her 3rd baby, and she just wasn't worried about it. She just was very relaxed, and that's exactly what I needed to get started, because I'm already careful, and so if you've got a mother that's nervous, it makes you nervous, and well, it would make me nervous. And so it just is exactly what I needed, and I learned so much. And so that's how it got started. So I think that's all I have for this time. I'll tell you more next time. If you will, hit like and subscribe. I'm new to this, but hey, I want you to watch my future videos, so like and subscribe. Until next time.